Welcome to Whisperwood Stories. Today, we read a story from Nosleep by username Fainting Goat. I teach the trees to talk. Once, I was like you, blissful, naive, able to look at the sky and see only the blue expanse and the clouds, able to look at the forest and see the leaves and the trees only for what they are. Then they were taken from me, my family. We lived in a modest house tucked up against a stretch of forest. I live there still, but it is a hollow shell now. I am reluctant to use the word live. Reside. Yes, I reside here. That is more accurate. The doors to my children's bedrooms stay closed. I sleep on the sofa instead of the bed I shared with my husband, and I allow the dust to settle where it will. I feel like I am floating through the remainder of my days, now that this house is empty. I marvel that I still leave footprints behind. I remember that day only in fragments. It was overcast. I remember the weight of grocery bags, but I could not tell you what was in them. I remember the way the creak of the door hinges echoed into the empty house, how my call to my children went unanswered. I abhor silence now. I fill my minutes with sound, with the TV, with music, anything to stave away that thundering emptiness that is forever etched into the recesses of my mind. At some point, I must have put the groceries down, but I don't recall this. My memories skip about. I remember the pattern of light on the floor of the kitchen, streaming in through the window over the sink with vivid clarity. I don't remember anything else other than the light and the door. Just that brief image like a snapshot in time. I can close my eyes and conjure it perfectly. The screen with the minute rips and tears, the flat shadow of the clouds like a blanket on the back patio, obscuring the faint stain of mold in the seams. But I don't remember my actions, just that I was standing at the back door, wondering why it hung open like this. I think I closed it. I think I searched the house and didn't find any sign of my family. Then I was outside, walking across the yard towards the forest, and all I could hear were the creaking of the branches and rustling of their leaves. The trees were in a tumult. It was like the waves of the ocean. I felt uneasy walking among them, and this kept me from calling out for my family. This is why I lived. There was a gulch behind the house. It is not very deep, but it is sheer, and from the top one could see clearly through the trees what was below. My children played there often. They would slide down the loose dirt of the gulch and then climb back up again until they returned home muddy and tired. We permitted it. I never feared for their safety. I wish I'd known. There is a tree that overlooks the gulch. It has split in two right at the crest. Over time, dirt has filled in the gap between stable ground and the tree trunk, so that a slight bridge of sorts exists. You can walk right to the split in the tree and lean out over the gulch and stare down into it. It is an old tree, but even it was creaking as it moved that day. I wondered when the wind had picked up so drastically and if I should be concerned. Yet I wanted to see if my family was there, if the children were down in the gulch, and if perhaps my husband had gone to join them. The tree's bark was rough underneath my palms as I leaned into it. I remember how it left imprints in my skin from how hard I gripped it. I don't like touching rough things anymore. I don't like the feel of wood. My family was down there, all three of them, my husband and my 2 children. One of them, the youngest, was no longer moving. I suppose that it is a mercy of some kind. I think my children were playing in the gulch, as they often did. My husband must have heard their cries and run to their rescue, thinking perhaps one fell. Perhaps it was a broken leg. Something they could be saved from. Not this. How could anyone expect this? There are things in the woods. I understand this now. I wish I'd understood this before, when I naively let my children go play there, ignorant of the danger. The woods stretch for miles. They harbor many things, and now, perhaps lured by the sound of my children laughing, of easy prey, some of those things had strayed close to my home. There were 4 of them. They were human, naked and filthy, with the heads of wolves. Yet even those were deformed. One had 2 heads, branching at the neck, that turned and snapped independent of the other. Another had 2 faces, conjoined in the middle with a single blind eye in what should have been a forehead, and an empty socket where the 2 sides merged. Its mouth hung open, unable to close, and it stumbled back and forth in a wavering, disjointed line. Yet another had no muzzle, its tongue hanging out from between the handful of teeth in the round hole of its mouth, black and swollen like a tumor. I do not think these are the only horrors in the world. These are just the ones my family were unfortunate enough to be killed by. My husband fought to reach our surviving child. He grappled at the one closest to him, but it was in vain. 2 of them were dragging our eldest away, and then one of the wolves crouched over him, tore with those teeth, and our son was gone. It was quick, there's that at least. But my husband, mad with grief and rage, continued to fight. There were too many. They were too strong, inhuman, obscene things. Born in some dark place along the other monstrosities that lurk in the recesses of the forest. One grabbed his left arm, another grabbed the right, and they pulled. I think he screamed when it came off. The arm. I think he did, but I don't remember it. I only remember the trees. Then they ate him. The trees bore witness to his cries. I lay there and wept, unable to scream my anguish lest I be discovered and killed as well. I covered my mouth with my hands, holding back my cries. I bit into the skin of my palm until I bled. One of us had to survive. One of us had to remember what was done here. Sometime later, much later, I think, I found myself slouched in that split of a tree, listening to the gentle murmur of the leaves. I considered letting myself fall, sideways, down into the gulch, and it was a silly, desperate thought. The fall wouldn't kill me, might not even break any bones. Nothing but soft, loose soil to catch me. I went down there. I searched, and I think I was half mad with my own grief. creatures had even eaten their bones. I'd heard the cracking, and I desperately covered my ears to block it out. I thought, though, perhaps there would be something left. Anything. But those monsters ate everything, their jaws distending to swallow limbs whole. My youngest was eaten in one bite, the belly of the creature swollen like a snake when it was done. I'm not sure what I wanted. Something to prove to myself that they'd lived and died here. Something to take back with me. Maybe they wouldn't be fully gone if I found that. I stumbled through the woods in an ever-winding circle until the sky grew overcast and it began to rain. Only then did I return to my silent house, and only then did I allow myself to scream and cry with the shock of what I had witnessed. The police searched. They told me that perhaps my husband had left and taken the children. He remains a missing person, and my children with him. My friends encouraged me to sell the house, to move, to rebuild. I smile and say I will think about it, but I cannot. I have a purpose now. Some days after, when the rain had stopped and the ground had dried, I went back to the Gulch. I stood there where the tree trunk split and wondered, should I go into those woods and not return? Walk until those creatures found me and I could join my family? And overhead, the trees wept with me. I heard their branches sway and sigh, murmuring their sorrow in a time to my own quiet weeping. I did not understand their words, but I understood their tone. They grieved. They could not warn us, not in a way that we would have understood. They could only watch as my family died and mourn when it was over. I didn't feel as alone. I went back to the trees often. I sat with them in that branch of the tree trunk and told them of my despair and my loneliness. In time, they began to speak words to me. Sorry, they whispered. We're sorry. We're sorry. They learned it from me, I think. I understand why they apologize. I know why the tree shook and roared as I entered the forest. They tried to warn my children. They tried to warn my husband. And then they tried to warn me. I wonder if I'd have survived if I'd called out their names, if the tree hadn't implored me to be silent. And for a long time, I was bitter that I was spared and left to my loneliness. Not anymore. There is something I need to do. The trees speak to me. They are hard to understand, but I have learned something of their language. And so I try to teach them our own. They say that trees are connected. There, under the ground, roots entwined, passing messages along, sharing memories. I can only hope they are telling each other what they have learned from me, how to speak words that we may understand. On and on, from root to root, from forest to forest. Have you ever gone into the woods and heard the canopy shake above you, even though you did not feel the wind yourself? Did it fill you with dread for a reason you could not name? Their voices are not very loud. You must listen hard to hear it, harder still to understand it. There are many things in the forest. The trees know them all. I teach the trees to talk. Listen to them whisper. Listen. Listen. They are trying to warn you. Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below, as well as interact with the original Reddit post. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Consider sending it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and don't let the shadows get too close.